Oh, no, good. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Hi, my name is Jason. I'm an alcoholic. And it's true, if you came expecting to hear my beautiful wife's story, I just want to let you know, I'm sorry, it's just going to be me, and we're definitely going to give refunds back at your door on your way out, so don't worry about that. She says to me yesterday when she started not feeling good, hey, can I ask you to do something for me without telling you what it is and you just say yes? I'm like, ooh, sure, trust, right? So it was just this, no problem. We'll get through it. All right, so my AA birthday is 9/15/03. I have a home group. It's called Brothers in Recovery. It meets every Tuesday in Linwood. I have a sponsor that I meet with regularly. I have sponsees that are here. I also have the pleasure of having a group of friends that came out to support me as well, and so thank you guys for that. My wife is sick, and this is kind of sad because tomorrow's Mother's Day, of course, but her mom is in town, and she's from Tucson. Her mom is, and so we were gonna, for the first time, be able to spend like a holiday with her. And not only that, but her sisters, and then like my dad. I don't think my dad's ever met her mom, so we were gonna have this whole big thing. And then the sun was out for an outdoor picnic, and it was like, oh my gosh, all the stars are aligning. It's like the Northern Lights might just come out, right? Like for this event. And oh wait, they were. No, but it was like all lining up, and then she gets sick, so it's a real bummer. But which brings me to my story and Mother's Day, and this is a bittersweet holiday for me. I kind of really don't like this weekend, and my mom was an alcoholic, right? Like so many of ours, I'm sure, and she ended up ultimately taking her life because of this disease when I was 13. And I had been introduced to alcohol through her. I was her mixologist. She loved White Russians, and I could make a mean White Russian. And as a kid, I learned that, first I would pour exactly as I was told and taught, right? As a young lad of 10 who should be mixing White Russians, of course. But I learned if I started to put a little bit of that other stuff, the vodka, and a little bit more of that, I could get what I wanted, right? And so, I contributed to the disease, and then I would, pour a little bit for myself as well. But I got a huge resentment, right? When my mom passed. And what happened was one day I'd had enough. And I said, Mom, if you don't go to treatment, it's either go to treatment or I'm out of here. I'm not going to be your son anymore. And she did it. She went to treatment. And for a while it was great. And she got sober. And, if you guys can't tell in this story, and probably I didn't make it clear really, but I was what they call the hero, right? And so I was the guy that would go and find my mom at the end of the night, wherever she'd be passed out. And I'd either put her head on a pillow or get her to the toilet so she could puke, or get her to bed, or, make sure that she was taken care of for the night. I had two siblings, a younger brother and a younger sister. I would make sure that they were fed, that they were put in bed, and that, we could move on with our day. And so that was kind of my job, taking care of my mom and ultimately my family. My dad, my biological dad, moved away when I was young. I have an adopted dad. He was in the military. He was in special ops, and so he was gone most of the time. And so it was just me and my mom, and so I was a real mama's boy. And you take that away, and I copped a resentment against my higher power, right? God. And I'm like, hey, how could you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? What did I do to deserve this? And so I experimented with alcohol a little bit more as a kid, the liquor store and the liquor cabinet in the friend's parents' house and all that good stuff. But and then this weird thing happened. I got introduced to church at a young age when my dad remarried, and I don't know, I was looking for something, right? And this will be the kind of the focus of my story. Always looking for something to fill what it felt like it was my mom-shaped hole. That's what I always imagined, but my God-shaped hole. And this God was given to me. It wasn't my God, and it's not my God today, but it worked for a while. And there were some friends, and I hung out, and it did its job. And it actually made it so I got so into it. I was like, my whole high school year, I didn't drink. I wouldn't mess around with girls. I was real good, little what is that, young life kid, right? And but somehow along this story, I also don't get along with my stepmom, and she's decided that I should be kicked out. So I'm kicked out at 15 and a half, and I start couch surfing on my friends' couches. And anyway, they're complaining, So my dad comes, he's like, here's the deal. You either need to go get your own place. I'm 15 and a half. I have no job, no nothing, right? Or you can go to military school. And I'm like, okay, military school it is. Here we go. And there's not really military school here locally. So you got to go over to the East Coast. And so they sent me away to Woodstock, Virginia. And it was Massanutten Military Academy. Yes, sir. And while I was there, if you guys don't know, over on the East Coast, they send kids, instead of sending them to youth, like Denny Youth Centers, they send them to military school. Right? So here I am, a kid that just didn't get along with his stepmom. I was kind of a mama's boy. And I'm in this school with gang members and such. And so I learned a lot about life really, really fast. I always tell people I probably got punched in the nose at least once a week at this school, right? And so fast forward to spring break, my senior year. And I've been so good all year. I'm going to everybody's houses. I'm not drinking. I'm doing the whole deal. I'm living the Christ way. And spring break, Myrtle Beach. Okay. This is pretty epic, right? And I'm with my buddy who's driving a convertible Stingray because his parents are in the mob. He's got a gun in the glove compartment. It's like, whoa, we're living the high life here. And so I'm going to go ahead and splurge and drink tonight, And well, anyway, I got so drunk, I ended up God knows where. I have no idea how I found the hotel room that I was staying at. I'm puking everywhere, but I had the night of my life, and I was like, I will never not live a day drunk again. And I did. I came back home, and that's, partying was my thing. And I was going to put partying before everything, right? Like, career-wise. So my dad was at Boeing, and he'd be like, son, why don't you come work at Boeing? And I'd be like, oh, screw that. They're going to make me take a drug test. This is what's important. I'm smoking weed, I'm drinking, I'm partying. And how am I going to party if I'm working second shift? Like, how does that work? Not going to happen, right? So everything is built around my party life. And that goes good for a while. I get my first DUI, and I remember I go to the AA meetings and all that stuff. Now, here's what I did. Maybe this sounds familiar, maybe it doesn't. But I got the 2-year deferred treatment. Boy, I stayed sober for 1 day, just long enough so that my THC level would drop naturally one little tiny smidgen. After that, I would carry around urine samples with me everywhere I went. So everywhere I went, I had somebody's urine in my pocket or in my glove box, and I thought I was the smart one. Right? I'm like, oh, I'm hearing all these other people. They're talking about this relapse thing. And I'm like, you guys are idiots, Meanwhile, I don't know if you've ever tried to carry urine, but it's nearly impossible to keep it in a container. Yeah. And then how do you keep it warm? You got the glove. Oh, so disgusting. But I was winning. And it only took me 3 years to finish this 2-year program, but I did it. I never relapsed once. Congratulations, Jason. You made it. But I did experience some meetings and stuff while I was there. And I remember thinking to myself, well, it sounds really cool. Maybe one day, just wasn't for me yet. So I was just going to not drive anymore. Like, I can still drink. And now, so my friends are like, oh my God, everywhere we went, like, oh, Jason can't drive. Like, sorry guys, I can't drive. I got my D-week. And I did so good for 6.5 years. Now, I don't know if the laws changed or not, but at the time, if you could make it 7 years with your deferred, it would go away, right? And so it's 6.5 years. I got my second DUI. Yeah. It was one of those things where I made it. I was at the Sonics game. I had one big beer at the Sonics game. Just the big one, but one. I was like, yeah, this is good. I happened to drive that night, so I was going to be good. And then we were driving home. I get a call. My buddy's like, hey, I'm playing at the so-and-so club. You should stop by. There's no way I'm walking into a bar where my buddy's the DJ, and I'm not going to just drink enough, So anyway, DUI number 2 comes along. Okay, so at this point, let me show you where I'm at life-wise. I had been a very successful salesperson, right? Because we can bullshit, right? And so I'm pretty good bullshitting. And I'm at this national place where I'm like one of the top salesmen. And in my mid-20s, I'm almost making 6 figures, so I'm doing pretty good. But I decide that I should become a drug runner, right? Why not? Now, here's the thing. If you're a drug runner, you don't have to get up in the morning. And I really liked that feature because I was struggling getting up in the morning and getting to work on time on all that. So I really thought about, this is funny. These are the decisions you're making. Okay, you're in this really successful company. You got all these friends. You're doing all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Or you could become a drug runner. And this is the decision that I made, and so that's what I did. I did that for a couple of years, knock on wood, and I know it's on YouTube, but I'm pretty sure all time limits are off. What is that called where they can't come back? Yes. So I'm pretty good there, but knock on wood, I never got busted. They called me the golden boy because I just didn't look like it and all that good stuff. But so I get the second DUI. Then I have, for me, what's my jumping off point. It's not all the accidents. It's not the putting your life in danger. It's not, none of that stuff for me really did it. It's really interesting what did do it, though. I met with this counselor, and she was trying to tell me, we were deciding, should I go to inpatient or outpatient treatment? And of course, because I'm such a good bullshitter, I convinced her that outpatient treatment would be fine for me. But then she probably could see through it a little bit. And she looks at me and she's like, yeah, but will you take it seriously? And I looked at her and I said, no, I will lie, cheat, and steal the whole time. And then it hit me like, oh my God, what did you just say? That's like, you can never take that back. And, but it's okay. Like, I just needed to tell my truth finally. And I remember feeling like, wow, Jason, that's probably the first time you've told the truth in God knows how long. And so we did the inpatient, and so I came back to AA. But before the night, I had my first God shot. I think the night before I was going to go into treatment, I ran into a guy. His name is Steve. God bless him. He's a beautiful man. And I had known him many years before, and he'd always loved on me when I was through my meth phase and stuff, and he had been recovered. And I never understood why this guy wanted to befriend me and help me. Well, I understand now. He was trying to help me, but I hadn't seen him in probably 5 years. And I saw him the night before, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going into inpatient treatment tomorrow, and I don't know what is going to happen. And he's like, hey, why don't you give me a call the day you get done, and I'll take you to a meeting. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take you up on that. And so I get done, and I'm out in Port Angeles or Port Townsend or Port somewhere, one of these ports. And I'm like, dude, can you come pick me up? And he does. And he takes me to a meeting. And he took me to Five Corners in Edmonds. There used to be a little yellow house there. And that was my first meeting back at the, first real meeting, where I really wanted to try. And we sat out in the parking lot, and I was like, oh man, I do not want to go in there. These people look crazy, and this is embarrassing. And but we sat out there long enough. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so I go into that meeting, and lo and behold, I meet my future bride. Is one of the first people that I meet there. So we've actually been friends for 20 years, right? And I also meet my ex-wife there, Okay. So that's that's kind of weird. Apparently, I can't marry outside of that little yellow house, so I'm running out of prospects on it. Anyway, so I mean, but I really hated the meeting. I did, and I hated the people in there. But I heard like all this really cool stuff, and I liked that part. And so they were like, "Hey," and I remember this guy comes to me. And he's like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't know." And he's like, "Well, you want to go to another meeting tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Why would I do that? I'm in a meeting right now." He's like, "I'm going to come pick you up," And then between this guy and Steve, they just kept taking me to meetings, and little by little, I started to kind of plug in. Now, here's the difference. Before, I would have never listened to any of this because I know what's best, and I'm a tough guy, and I don't need your help, right? I've gone through, no, I'm good. I got this. But this time, I was given the gift of desperation. I was given the gift of willingness. And even though I didn't understand a thing that anybody was saying, I was willing to listen, and I was willing to do the stuff that was suggested to me to the best of my ability. And so they said, keep coming back. Now, they said keep coming back to me a lot, which, I thought was just kindness back then. Of course, I, realize now it's just because I thought I was pretty sick. But they also said get a home group, and I did. So I made that little yellow house my home group. They said get a service position, so I did. And they said get a sponsor. And I kind of had Steve, but then I also let another guy sponsor me, Guy. And we started going, Guy was kind of my first AA sponsor. And he was, if you know him, he's up at Delano Club and stuff, curly-haired guy. He's pretty ferocious with his program. So we get in the truck, and he's like, "All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to do this, and you're going to do that." And the only thing I really remember out of it is and no more sport fucking, is what he tells me. And I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what you're saying. He's like, "Yep, no more. You're done with that." I'm like, "Okay, all right, I guess." And sorry, YouTube. That's what he said. And so I'm into it, and I'm doing it, and I keep coming back. And little by little, I start going through the steps, and I start to develop a relationship with a power greater than myself. Now, I'll always think back, like I was definitely the educational variety with my spiritual program. For example, I had a flip phone at the time. Yeah. And it had this cool feature where the little words would run across the banner. And I'd play with that. But I'd write the little spiritual messages on there. Let go and let God, so people would see it and they'd be like, "Oh, he's so spiritual," I had no idea what that meant, I was just like, what on earth? But I figured if I looked at it enough, like one of these days it might sink in. Like I was so convinced that everybody else in the program understood this spirituality thing. And like maybe there was like a whole different day of the week that I was missing because I just did not get it. Now, I look back on it and I know today that I was connecting and that I did have a spiritual experience, because the reality is that for at least the last 3 years of my drinking and using, I was the guy that every single day said I was done. And I believed it. Like my friends were so irritated with me every single night. Like, dude, you're not done. You can't say it every single night. But I believed it. This was going to be it. I was so inspired. And then the friends went away. And then I look in the mirror. And then it hits me one day. No, you can't stop. This is it. This is your life now, right? So now it's just a matter of how do we how do we maintain? And I remember at that point, I was like a huge fan of the what is that called? Where guys can still like live lives? A maintenance drinker, right? God, I wanted to be a maintenance drinker so bad. I'm like, how do you get stuff? How do you keep relationships? Like, I could not do that. I was always just barely, like, like, oh, just like a straw out of the water, barely keeping my head above water, just driving like beater cars with like windows missing and like never tabs or insurance. Are you kidding me? What kind of luxurious lifestyle were you living? If I was lucky to even have a driver's license, places, jobs, I've had over 50 different jobs, moving all the time, just a wreck and wanting to stop all the time. And then one day I was able to do it. I wasn't able to do it. I was given the ability to by something greater than me. And to me, I truly believe that that is a miracle. I truly believe that I could not have done it. The book talks about it. I was beyond human aid, right? I didn't know that because I'm the can-do guy. But I still am, right? I'm still like my own worst enemy. I'm still the, watch out, I'm going to get it done. This is something I have to work on regularly. But I realized that, I was not able to do that. Something greater than me was. And so that first miracle happened, and that's good. And I kind of hung on to that. That was kind of my thing. I'm like, okay, well, that was a miracle, so I can get behind that. I don't understand what a spiritual power is or what it actually means to me or how it is that I'm going to develop a relationship greater, with that power greater than myself. But I can at least get behind the idea that I wasn't able to do it and he or she was, right? And so then along the way, you're kind of developing that relationship. And I look back now and I realize that maybe I was a little bit more spiritual than I gave myself credit for as well, in that, I kept taking suggestions of others. And I do believe that God speaks to us through other people. And so while I didn't have the ability to come up with these great decisions on my own, I certainly wouldn't have kept going to the same meeting week after week or showing up to that other meeting or, sat in that truck with Guy as he, was barking orders at me or do the steps. And so that willingness, that was a gift. And so that's kind of like the second spiritual experience for me. And then going through the steps and having the home group. And for me, I've been through the steps a few times and with different sponsors. I've had multiple sponsors. I've had multiple home groups. I was at my first home group for the first 7 years. And there we developed a lot of lifelong relationships that, they're still friends today. Grant was there and Cody was there and my wife's and others, and Bill, he would have made it tonight, but he hurt himself a little bit. But man, what an amazing experience that was, starting to build these friendships and friendships with, like based on not just because we drank together, but because we shared in this, common peril, but then we shared in this common solution. And that's the gift. So I kind of was one of those guys where I didn't get any sponsees for probably like my first 5 or 6 years, I think. And I remember at like year 4 or 5, I'd start complaining to people, like, how come I'm not getting any sponsees? And they're like, well, somebody's got to want what you have, And I'm like, oh, really? It's like that? I thought it was just because I wasn't saying the right words or looking in the right places, So I started to, change a little bit. But what really spurred it on was that I got a divorce in sobriety. And we had 2 kids together, a daughter who's now 18, graduating from high school this year, and a son who's 17. And to get a divorce in sobriety, and it was ugly. Like, I did not handle it well. that was humbling in such a different way than coming in initially. Initially, it was kind of funny and cute and like, oh, your drunk stories. Oh, I peed on everything and I puked all the time and ha ha ha. But this was like real. Like, oh, I don't have anybody to blame this on but myself. And so this is at 7 years of recovery and you're acting like this. No wonder, right? And I remember I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, and she threw me out, and so I got a place, and somehow they made it so I had to pay like a really large amount of child support, even though I wasn't working, and I had no money. This place that I got, I don't even remember how I did all this. No furniture. I had like a chair. I had my kids who would be coming, that I had to pretend like I'm a dad. And that's when I said, okay, God, I'm ready to get out of your way, right? That first 7 years was still a lot of self-will run riot, right? And I just remember like this feeling of saying, okay, whatever happens, if I'm supposed to just fall apart and, if I'm supposed to be homeless and do all this, with nothing, then fine, whatever it is. But, it's in your hands now, and I will do whatever it is, thy will, not my will. And I'm not kidding you, man. Like 3 days later, I got a phone call from a coworker, and she says, hey, I need to, I was starting a web design business. That was my big idea. And she says, hey, I need you to build me a custom website, and I need you to do all this social media stuff and all this SEO stuff. And I want to pay you 10 grand, and I want to pay you 5 grand up front because I have the money right now if you can get started. And I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. Like, jobs don't just come like that. And it wasn't, it was like the hugest God moment for me. And that's when, I really knew that my relationship was real. And I was going to put my life in my higher power's hands no matter what, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Do we take it back all the time? Absolutely. It's a daily reprieve. If I don't wake up, if I don't start my day and end my day in prayer and meditation, if I don't pause when agitated along the way, if I don't remind myself through the day that it's thy will, not my will, I can go sideways, absolutely, like we all can. But the beauty is that today, what used to take me, I remember in the beginning, sometimes I'd be stuck in that funk for weeks, and I wouldn't know why. And then the weeks would be done, and then I'd be like in this great mood for like a couple of days. And then I'd be like, hey, you know what? I just need to put that in a bottle. Okay, Jason, just remember what this good day is like. But I didn't, because the good day was probably because I went to a meeting, probably because I talked to my sponsor, but I didn't want to acknowledge all that. I just wanted it to be because, what Jason was doing. And it just didn't work out that way for me. It just doesn't. I have to get connected every single day. And that's been the biggest lesson and the biggest gift for me. And I'm at a minute 12, and I can talk about amends and, different stuff like that. I'll share one amends story just because it's had a lot of meaning to me. But at about the same time, I know I have a minute, I'll make it fast. At about the same time I'm going through this divorce, I remember going to this meeting, and it was about amends, and I stood up and I gave about a 10-minute speech on why I wasn't going to give my ex-wife an amends. Right? This was a good speech. It made a lot of sense. And this guy takes me aside afterwards, and he's like, hey man, that's not how the program works, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Didn't you hear my speech? It makes a lot of sense. Oh, I went home that night. I'm like, oh my God, he's all right. And I've been willing to make amends to that person since. She doesn't want my amends, but that's not my problem. So, but I did make amends to my dad, the same dad that sent me away to military school, who I didn't talk to for a year. And in all the years I had wanted him to apologize to me, all the years I wanted him to come to me and say, "Oh, son, I really messed up, and you were right all along." And that night, I shared with him what my part was, and my dad started crying. And my dad is like a lot of our dads. He was a Vietnam vet. He's not. He's got a Purple Heart. He's a pilot. He doesn't cry. He made fun of me every day for my pink shoes, right? But this man started to cry, and he started to apologize to me. All those things that I had wanted to hear apologies for all my life, that night, and we've been like really like best friends ever since. So that's all thanks to the program. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to everybody. Thank you for listening to me, and thanks to Dan for showing up on short notice. And thank you.